Well, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Daniela. I'm really delighted to be here today. I've learned a lot in my 6 months at the State Library, and one of my favourite hours was meeting with Daniela and hearing about the Women's Club. It's been an extraordinary few months. You don't often get the chance to lead such an extraordinary institution like the State Library. So look, I've learned a lot in the role. I think I had a particular view of what the State Library offered. I knew about its fantastic reading rooms. I'd written my PhD largely in those reading rooms, in the Mitchell reading room, looking into endless archival boxes and diaries and all the rest of it, having a wonderful time. I knew the Governor Marie Bashir reading room quite well. I knew the exhibitions, I knew the cafe, I knew the shop. One knows, you think you know an institution. And then, of course, and I knew quite a few of the staff, Richard Neville, a number of them. I had been on the jury of the New South Wales Premier's History Awards for 3 years. So I'd done partnerships when I led Museum of Sydney way back when. But then you arrive and it's the tip of the iceberg. The institution is an extraordinary institution. It's a very complex institution, having worked at the Art Gallery in a very mini period, about 9 months at the Powerhouse way back when I was young and naive and about 21 and was absolutely clueless. I remember not knowing how to turn on a computer. How weird is that? I was terrified. Do I press that button? Anyway, way back when. And then, of course, at Historic Houses Trust Sydney Living Museums for very many years. But the thing that struck me the most was, yes, the extraordinary site on Macquarie Street and all that offers, the absolutely, world-leading collections that we have there. But the thing that I almost loved the most was the connection with the 364 public libraries across the state. Many of you will have watched the banning of books at Cumberland City Council in the last 2 weeks. Rest assured we were working every single hour of every single day into the night focused on that issue. Because the State Library is the funder of subsidies to all the libraries across the state. We work with every single local government area, and it's an area of the job that I've learnt a lot about. In my past job in planning and transport, I work with most of the councils across New South Wales, but this is a really special relationship. Obviously, the whole world can access us through our online offer, and that's incredibly important. But that relationship with supporting librarians across the state, the amazing work that they do day in, day out, providing access to information, but not just sort of essential information, those magical experiences of connecting children with books, finding out, they're detectives, they're matchmakers, they're treasure hunters, they're all those things that librarians are. So, it's been an interesting few weeks in the role, and I think the community spoke out, didn't it? It spoke out very loudly about the primacy and the role, the social role, the cultural role of libraries at the absolute heart of democratic societies. And I think it's, in a sense, it's that real...
Yeah, I think they deserve that clap. I think librarians deserve that clap.
And indeed, I've got Pim Thompson here with me today. She saw that I was speaking, and she leads our reader services team. So she's the one who manages all the staff who manage the Mitchell reading room and the Governor Marie Bashir reading rooms. And I think you'll agree that the attention, the customer service, all the rest of it, of our staff in those reading rooms is second to none. Whether you're a high school student and you're looking for information, you're doing your essay in history or society and culture or something like that, Kim's got assistance for you, her and her team, right through to the kind of incredibly erudite leading scholars through our scholarship and research program who are doing great work. So look, I've learned a lot about the work that we do across the state. The work is limitless. I wake up at 3 a.m. thinking, and people just keep saying, it's all right, So, and I'm lucky that I inherited an institution that was strong in so many ways, with expertise that's deep, very, very deep. There has been no erosion of expertise at the State Library, and that is absolutely core to an institution that is so special to the state, to Australia. We are the oldest library, and we will be celebrating that in 2026. We'll be shouting from the rooftop about the value and the glory of libraries. We'll also be, thank you for your acknowledgement of country. We will obviously also be shining a light on 65,000 years of storytelling in this state and in this country, and I will work with our Indigenous team very closely on how do we mark 200 years. I've probably gone on and on.
No, there's
talk for days. You have to stop me. You all need lunch, see?
Oh, I mean, I've got a lot of questions, and now it's all jumping around. But I was going to say that the library's it's not just a place where we store books. It's actually part of the 24-hour daytime economy. You're open quite late. There is a bar upstairs. And you have a number of events happening as well.
Yeah, I don't get home much, is the truth. They're long days and into the night. Yeah, our library bar, how many of you have been to the library bar? Yeah, quite a few. If you haven't, make sure you book, because we're pretty well booked out every night. You have views to Farm Cove, the Opera House, obviously to the Domain. It's a really special part, and it's really important to me that you can have lots of different relationships with the State Library. You can come in and be a scholar and a reader and so forth. You can pop into the cafe. You can celebrate something special in the bar. And last night was a good example where a friend of mine tipped me off that we had Michael Cunningham in the city. Michael Cunningham wrote The Hours, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, screenwriter, lives in New York City. So I said, maybe he'd like a tour of the library. And in he came. We toured on Book Webb, who is the CEO of Sydney Writers' Festival, is now on our library council. So she joined me. He'd been the star of Melbourne Writers' Festival last week. But of course, exclusive contracts means that they then don't speak in Sydney. Anyway, he came in, and of course we ended up at the bar. And we're welcome to everyone. We're welcome to, from Pulitzer Prize-winning authors to everyone in between. And one of my dearest friends in central government, I met a lot of people in my sort of 4 or 5 years where I wandered into planning and transport and thought they were speaking in a different language for a while. I met Mike Rodriguez, who leads the 24-hour economy. You might see him in the press. He's the one championing how do we respond to being a vibrant city at night and all that entails. And, and I always tell him we are running a nighttime economy. Our reading rooms are open till 8 p.m. They're open 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Thursday. And my favourite thing before I go home is to walk around and look in the reading rooms and see that we have young students in there. We have people who finished work who are probably writing their first novel. We have researchers. We have people watching, Netflix. There's so many people watching movies. And I was interesting that we do that here and not at home. But it's that reminder that we are a safe space. We are a welcoming space. We are a warm space on winter nights. We are a cool space on summer nights. We are a place that welcomes absolutely everyone, and we are at the absolute kind of democratic heart of our city. And we will continue to push that. My dream is to get to, we have over about 1 million people. We've had a huge year visitation-wise, particularly over the summer, but I want to get us to 1.5 million. 2 million. I think we deserve to, but obviously we've got a big site. How do we encourage more people to come to our exhibitions, for example, that are absolutely fantastic? How do we share that they're on and so forth?
Yeah, and that is the other secret, that there are some galleries and artworks exhibitions that you have. And some of our members went to the Shakespeare one that you inspired, and also we've now got the Women's Club secretary minutes there.
Yeah, I raced there this morning, took a photo because I thought maybe some of you test me on it. But we've got an acquisitions gallery, actually where Shakespeare was, and it's acquisitions of all different sorts. I love it because it's got children's illustration right through to Michael Kelly's some of Michael Kelly's 65 sketchbooks that he's just given to us. Somebody working in public housing, at times on the fringes of society. He'd done an incredible array of paintings, but these sketchbooks. He wrote to Dr. John Vallance. John replied, sent a curator, Mathilde, to his house, to his flat, and she was completely blown away by what she saw. And some of those sketchbooks, few people are nodding, few people have seen them. Those sketchbooks, some of them are on display. Most extraordinary record of Sydney. But in one of the displays, there's a Women's Club minute book and a photo of the first president, I think. So I've just talked to Jo, and we're going to, she's going to come in and have a look at the archive and that particular display. And it talks about your club, so please come and see it. It's right at the end of one of the showcases. Yeah.
So let's talk about your journey with books and libraries, because there has been a consistent thread throughout your childhood and now. When did this love affair start with books?
Oh, look, I was one of the lucky ones in many ways, and I say that how can we actually turn our luck if we are in leadership roles to making sure that every citizen and every child has access to books. But I'm the youngest of 7 children, a rambling Catholic family in Adelaide, both parents migrants, arrived in Australia not knowing anyone. My dad was an architect, my mum was a teacher. My mum was a kind of, incredibly with 7 children, a kind of 2 book a week reader. Like there were times where we knew mum was reading, no one went near her. She would lock the bathroom door, and that was, I think, where a lot of reading went on, because that was really the only lockable room fully in the house. But she was a teacher at the school I went to, a small Catholic school in North Adelaide, and she was the provider of books. She was the one that ran the after-school book club. She would find those kids who were bright but probably didn't have access to many books at home. She would just ply them with books, and it was quite judgmental in her own way though. Like she would say, no, that book is not ever high enough. Like Enid Blyton and things she spurned, but she would make sure that they read other books. Like she was quite funny. But she was part of a Patrick White book club, and I remember that was the first time I'd heard about Patrick White. She'd go off to a book club. And then my father was an architect and a kind of an artist. He loved language and architecture and art. So we were well versed in books from a very, very early age, and museums and so forth. So although, the house was kind of falling down around us really. 1 bathroom, 7 children, you can picture the scene. But there was, and because I'm from somewhere else, we always knew that there was a big wide world out there, and love of books and language and literature and so forth was huge.
Did you say that really shaped your professional journey? Because as Jo gave in your bio, you have really you span across diverse fields: architecture, public spaces, transport, writing.
Yes.
So, where was that moment that they intersected? Was there a moment, because you had, you've done your PhD writing. I'm fascinated about when they all come together.
Well, they've all come together in this job. Yeah, to be honest, you've all had careers. You all have careers. You learn bits and pieces in every bit of your career. Don't you have different sorts of experiences? And for instance, I was working at Sydney Living Museums Historic Houses Trust, and I was in a rut. I knew I needed to get out. But the longer you're in one place, the harder it is, I think. And I got a call to say, would I come to the Department of Planning and lead a Premier's priority? It was so of course I can't. Of course I won't. I didn't see myself as working in planning, even though I'd done my PhD in the kind of history of planning. And the woman kept ringing, and she was the same woman who ran Create. And she'd worked with me a bit, and she was really insistent. And she said, come for 3 months, you need to do something different. And it's that funny thing in life, every now and again somebody looks out for you. And she said, if it's disastrous or you hate it, you can go back. And so I took this leap, and I was really terrified. That was in 2019. And it was kind of the best thing I could have done, because I so needed to move out. My kids were growing up. I've got a 23-year-old and a 17-year-old. God, she's not even 18. What was 17. So she's doing her HSC. And, you would know if you've got children, as they head to their kind of middle teens, something starts to lift, and you perhaps got a bit more time to devote utterly to work in many ways, and I was at that point. So I took on that Premier's priority, which was a bit called Greener Public Spaces, and it was about walkable access to parks and playgrounds and walking trails and libraries. And also I kept inserting libraries, which is sort of funny.
So that was before COVID, or was that?
Yes, it was just before COVID. It was a Premier Parité Premier's priority, a wonderful Premier's priority, and it was about that people should have access within 10 minutes walk of their homes. How do we increase that to having access to great parks and playgrounds and other sorts of things? So I sort of ended up in planning. There was no budget for it. I had a staff of about 4 or something. And but bit by bit we grew it. And then of course COVID hit in the March of 2020. And we had so many challenges in that, but boy did it underscore the value of people's walkable access to public space. So I moved very fast, within 5 weeks of COVID hitting, to doing a survey. I knew the people who ran GEL in Denmark, and I was noticing that they were doing a survey in New York City and other things, which was measuring people's access and love of public space. So I sent a cheeky email saying, can I just borrow your survey at no cost? Didn't have money. And they said, yeah, why not? Be interesting to see what Sydney-siders think. And so we sent out a survey, and we were absolutely inundated with people wanting to tell us why their local park mattered, why their local play space mattered, why access to coastline, why bike riding mattered, all these sorts of things. So we just used that to the hilt, and we attracted quite a bit of funding for, parks, play spaces, things like that. And of course, the flip side of that was the places that closed. And what were those places that we missed most that closed? They were things like libraries and performances and museums and other things. So we could tell the flip side of the impact of loss of access to libraries. And the woman who's now the Secretary of Planning, Kirsten Fishburn, an extraordinary woman who was my boss for a while, she had worked as the CEO of Liverpool Council. And I remember her saying to me, the The thing is, Caroline, when the library closed, that was access to digital technology for a lot of our population, access to a computer, access to, everything from somewhere to drop in and play and basic things like toilets and other things for perhaps people, homeless people and people living on the fridge. So it was this, it's a classic thing. You don't know what you've got till you don't have it. And I think COVID really underscored that about public space, and that public space really matters. And public space is everything from free access to libraries and museums and those wonderful institutions, right through to places where we can take our children to play, where we can walk our dogs, where we can, so it was, I'm not going to call it a free kick, but in a way it was to the importance of these kind of institutions and places. So I've never worked as hard as I did what else were we doing? Like, there I was, home, computer. But the team really rallied, and I had a team of incredible sort of place people, combination of economists, geographers, planners, people who'd come from the arts and all sorts of things, and we all just sort of worked together. Then it moved sort of from parks and play spaces into lots of the street activations, because it was about how could we grow community safety and confidence. How could we get people back into our streets and places? So we were lucky enough to get some funding to start to do that, whether it was in, Penrith or Lakemba or, Surrey Hills or wherever it was. And we worked with the councils to do a lot of that work. And we work with libraries. I work with Cameron Morley, who is outstanding and runs our public library network and has been the person working with me on the book banning situation for the past 3 weeks or so. And we worked on a project with the State Library of New South Wales. So it was sort of, prescient. Is that the word? I suppose it is, in some ways, to have been doing that work and then, Yeah,
and I think, as you described, the relationship shifted during COVID with public spaces.
Yes.
Have you seen that it's sustained or it's continuing to evolve, or have people just, returned back to habits? How has it changed at all, our relationship with public spaces?
Yeah, look, I think it has, but it's incumbent on all of us leading these areas to keep telling that story and keep underscoring the value, the social value, the cultural value, indeed the economic value of our institutions and our offer. For talk about the library provides so many essential services, like really essential services, but right through to the kind of magical experiences and everything in between. So I think we're about to do a piece of work about that value, the impact of the value of what we offer. So we need to keep doing that. I think the thing that people, I'm speaking personally, the thing that people missed, of course, was our ability to roam, our ability to move around. We missed those very distinctive, beautiful spaces that, I think it was that reminder we can't take this access for granted. And I think that's the thing that people probably missed most, that I think people are still enjoying is, places where you have social exchange. So the library, yes, is a place to find information, but it's also a place to gather, a place to connect, a place to meet friends. It's a place to kind of get together and listen to a author talking. It's a place to see a children's play performed. It's a place to, come and use our friends' room and gather and so forth. So it does this huge number of things that, and then that also, I'm trying to work with the team to how do we visually tell the story of what we've got at the library. There's no other room like the Friends room. There's no other room like the Mitchell reading room. There's no other room like the Shakespeare room. Like these really distinctive, beautiful spaces that lift your spirit, make you, think about things differently. And of course, COVID, kind of stopped that, let alone one's ability to travel and explore and the rest of it. So, look, I think people want to forget COVID, and I think quite rightly. I mean, I had a son at college in Melbourne, and it was one of the worst times in our lives because he wasn't in great spirits there, but he couldn't come home. You couldn't cross the state border. I mean, remember that time there. And my husband, I was deep in this job, and my husband moved to Melbourne for 6 weeks because we thought one of us needs to get there so that, he's got the chance to go and drop in. And, families will make, and, we had no idea when that border would open. And my husband doesn't like Melbourne, should they? But I could not go with any ease, and he moved there. And, you did what you had to do, didn't you?
And you had to follow what was being advised, even though our leaders were also just working, correct, 9 weeks, always just something was shifting.
Yeah, daily, hourly, it was, yeah.
Yeah. I think post-COVID and even before COVID, a lot of arts organisations, a lot of probably public spaces and museums are all grappling with a similar question, which is the relevance in the 21st century. And I think there's that kind of myth that in this digital world and AI that books are going to be redundant and that we're all going to be online.
Correct.
What's your answer to that? What is the balance of the State Library?
Well, the relevance has never been greater. I mean, it's libraries, as you'd all know, their profile is soaring. And yet how many times has there been, libraries are dead, library. I look around at our visitation, and we've just done a piece of work, actually, beginning to understand our readers and our visitors more. And I would say we have the youngest people, particularly in that kind of 15 to 25 age group of any of the cultural institutions. We don't need to put on anything special for them. They're coming. They're coming in droves. That generation use libraries all the time as a place to study. I know many of you are nodding. You've probably got your own children who are using libraries heavily. So look, the formats change. The way we consume things changes, but our search for knowledge never changes. We'll always have a search for knowledge. We're human beings, and the library, I think, is the first port of call. And if our numbers and other things are anything to go by, in some ways, digital access only grows the need for physical access. And I think with an institution like ours, with so many original artefacts, treasured manuscripts, paintings, people want to see the real thing. Nothing replaces seeing original objects or being able to touch original objects and have access. So the digital world can only help tell that story, and of course help us to be able to do that globally as well. The library is alive and well and kicking. and it's alive and well and kicking in your local area too. And part of the joy of being part of the library is that our library council is incredibly hard working. And yes, we have many meetings at Macquarie Street, but about 4 times of the year we go out to regional libraries and metropolitan libraries. So we're about to go to Bega and so forth in June. We were in Coffs Harbour seeing their extraordinary new library towards the end of last year. We spent a very happy day recently at Lane Cove and Mossman and the new library at St Leonard's. And it's always that reminder that libraries come in all sorts of architectural formats. Some of them are now embedded in shopping malls and so forth. Some of them are on their own. We went to the Campbelltown Library, you have to drive to get to it. It's about to move into the city. My earliest years were at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. I'd worked in universities a bit, and I ended up working under Edmund Capel for 3 years it was one of those remarkable lessons in leadership, even though, you know, I shared an office with the now head of Australian Art, and we were like the absolute babies, like at the end of a corridor at the beginning of our careers. But Edwin would drop in pretty well every day, chat to us, we felt valued, we felt part of something. So I picked up that. Obviously, Museum of Sydney as a curator and then running the Historic House Trust was a very big part of my career, learned a huge amount. And then, of course, moved in and was wonderful access to collections and those places that are so special, from Bulkley's House, Rose Seidler and so forth. But then, yeah, that move into planning and transport was pretty weird, actually. And the planning, then my team got literally kind of moved from planning into transport. And I was like, transport? Like, I didn't know anything about transport. And ended up leading the what's called active transport, which is, of course, just walking. And I'm like, can't we call it walking? You know, walking, bike riding. I ended up leading the e-scooter trials, and you said, like, the weirdest things one finds that you end up working in. But I'm pretty open to learning. I learnt a lot. There are really wonderful people working in Transport for New South Wales and planning. I made lifelong friends there. I took a few people from the arts who made people think differently, which is always a good thing. But the thing I learned is that one's work in cultural institutions actually prepares you incredibly well, because you do things often with not huge budgets. You therefore form partnerships with other allied groups and others across the state. You have to be creative in thinking, innovative in thinking. You have to be, and you're all about the public.
Like, just the values alignment.
Yeah, the values are huge, you know, and that thing that, you know, your public is always there. They've got this huge investment. You know, they're the owners of our public institutions as taxpayers in the best possible sense. And they're there to tell you what they think of you. And boy, do they tell you what they think of you, don't they, Kim? We get great, you know, we get Coro all day, every day, people writing to us, people who love things, people who don't like things, people who hate things, people who, you know, everything in between. And that's a really powerful thing. And I learned that from Peter Watts. I remember he ran Historic House Trust for very many years, you know, a remarkable man. And he said to me, you've got to love the responses and the diversity of responses, because it tells you that there's purchase on your institution. You know, there's investment in it, there's interest in it, and all the rest of it. And I kind of never, you know, you learn things along the way, don't you, from different, and you learn from, quite frankly, the bad leaders that you've had as well. You know, we've all had managers that are questionable. You know, you learn by looking and you know, we're not perfect, but yeah, you learn from everything that you experience. Yeah.
I know that much is being served, so please help yourself. I've got just two final questions. One was just dropped one of my thoughts. Oh, that's right. I know that you're a big lover of sport.
I am.
Yeah, so there's this other side of Caroline. Can you tell us what, I know that you say that you're pretty much there all the time at the library, but what else do you do?
Yeah. Oh, look, and you know, I don't say it because I'm addicted to work. I have a big life outside work, and I think once one succumbs to it all being about work, I mean, that's not healthy for anyone. Yeah, my primary love as a child was sport, actually. I was a runner and swimmer and, yeah, just loved sport. So I wanted to be a PE teacher, I remember, for quite coming. I think I liked the idea of the clipboard and, you know, whatever, timing people, encouraging people to be healthy. But yeah, we're a big soccer family, football family. We love Sydney FC. We love the Matildas deeply. My husband rides bikes. So, yeah, we're big into sport. But then our youngest child, who's 17, is a football player. So we travel the state following her. On Sunday, she plays all over Sydney and all the rest of it.
Sorry, we're still having in conversation. I can hear conversations happening. I'm going to finish with one more question, and then we will have lunch, and then there'll be time for questions after that. So thank you. Final question. What's on your reading list at the moment? Have you got any books? Have you got 2 a week at the moment?
No, gosh, in my dream. I sort of often over Christmas, I get very excited and read a lot, and then you go back to work and you think, I'm reading, I got a new book for Mother's Day, I suspect not chosen by my children, called The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians. That's the latest thing. James Patterson, which is fantastic, and that's about, how both of those professions connect you with the joy of reading. So I've only just started that. But my favourite book in the last month has been All the Beauty in the World. I don't know if many of you have read it. He was a Metropolitan Museum of Art museum guard for close to, I think, like 10 years. And it's a story, his brother died, and it's a story of loss, of art, of kind of institutional life. And it's a really remarkable read. So they've been my two, and my husband buys pretty well all my books. And I often think, oh God, what? I'm never going to read that. And then I start reading that. And the last one that I finished was the story of Michelle Ford, who was a phenomenal swimmer. I love swimming. And she was one of the athletes that went to the Moscow Games. So it's a political story of what happened with the boycott and the rest of it. So, yeah, I recommend all of those three.